I'm Sharon Perenboom, and I'm going to be going through the Module 7 of the Grant Management Training, which is about this Section 5311 program. Okay, so driving is great, but what if you don't have a vehicle? Well, transportation's been around for a long time, but what about people who don't own their vehicle? How do they get around? They need to have public transportation available. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy told Congress that our national welfare requires good urban transportation. We need to have a balanced use of private vehicles, modern mass transportation if we're going to have urban growth. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to stick around long enough to enact anything, of course, but in 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson did sign the Urban Mass Transportation Act, which created the predecessor of what we now know as the Federal Transit Administration. Before 1978, most of the federal transit assistance went to urban areas. And as you know, they came to realize small cities and rural areas also need public transit. So in 1978, Congress created a new program which provided public transportation funds for service in areas fewer than 50,000 people. And that's what we now call the Section 5311 program. So this presentation is about the regular 5311 program that's been around for years, and this is what we expect to continue. It doesn't include the COVID-19 relief funding. These funds are apportioned to Oregon separately and they're allocated separately. And we do have a separate module that's going to talk just about the relief funding. The COVID relief packages include 5311 funds on top of this regular 5311 program. They're one-time funding sources with different goals and requirements for the different relief programs. This program we're talking about is formula-based and it's made up only of 5311 funds, although they are typically used in conjunction with other funds, and we encourage people to mix up their funds to leverage them. The 5311 program is a stable funding source for public transportation in areas of fewer than 50,000 people, and the points on the slide kind of break that out. The stability factor has been very important to subrecipients over the years. They want something they can count on. Well, it's always possible that something could happen to this program. It's been operating for a long time, and the amount that Oregon receives has gone up over time. You know, we think it's a keeper for sure. There are currently 35 program participants in the Section 5311 program. There's no single agency type. Subrecipients are spread throughout Oregon. Some are adjacent to urban areas and some are out in the boonies that we might call frontier rural and kind of everything in between. Larger areas may operate fixed route bus service, while some other areas may have a smaller dial-a-ride service. Some areas have a high need for connectivity among cities or communities and offer intercity or commuter services. Service providers are always encouraged to make meaningful connections to intercity bus and airport connections when they can. And by meaningful, we mean making connections where you don't have to just miss the other bus or have to wait for hours for the next bus or even until the next day. When possible, agencies will try to connect with other transportation services run by other transit providers, including those intercity travel options. Communities' needs vary, and so do the services that they offer. A lot of people rely on public transportation to get to work or school, to get to medical appointments, shop, visit with friends and relatives. And this slide shows an example of a service that provides work trips to the mountain and also recreational trips. Public transportation generally doesn't make money, especially in small cities and rural areas, without the economies of scale the larger area has. If public transportation made money, private companies would be doing it. Fares do not cover the full cost of public transit in fareless systems. Public transportation is expensive and transit agencies need help to keep things moving. As mentioned earlier, our transit agencies have made it clear over the years that they want a stable source of funding. They want something they can count on when they put their budgets together. They want the ability to plan ahead. This includes thinking beyond day-to-day operations to maintain their fleet over time because buses sometimes need to replace. They don't last forever, and they have to have proper maintenance to keep them safe because safety is our utmost concern when we provide public transportation. So the 5311 program is funded through a formula, and I've listed here how it works, which probably a lot of you know. There have been a few discretionary solicitations in the past when funds have accumulated, but that's been quite a while. The formula's changed over time, as has the money. Back in 2000 or so, some smaller grantees were receiving about $20,000 a year, which is not much, as you know. And as the money has increased, also have the requirements for some of the things that you have to do. Over the years, the formula program participants have continually insisted over and over that they want the money to be allocated via a formula, that's why we do it this way. It's what people want. FTA actually leaves it up to the states to determine how the 5311 fund should be allocated. We chose to use a formula, and FTA has approved that methodology. The last time I checked, though, most states did not allocate 5311 by formula, and some were looking into it. The 5311 formula funds are technically not entitlements for existing program participants, but they've kind of functioned like entitlements. Most of the program participants have only left after something like a census determines that the population is more than 50,000 people and they move into an urban program. That would be the 5307 program. So for the Section 5311 money, the allocation is biennial and so is the agreement, but you can't necessarily just draw it all down in the first year because we could run out of money as happened in the past. And as mentioned, the 5311 program is a formula allocation, and the formula allocations are estimated and awarded on a biennial basis to correspond with the state's biennial budgeting process. And that's why the agreements are also written to cover the biennium. The allocations for the biennium are estimated. FTA apportions the 5311 funds on an annual basis. This means our budget wizard has to estimate the second year's apportionment. He's pretty good, but things can happen. If the actual funding falls short of our estimate, it's possible the awards could be cut after the grant is executed. So far, that hasn't happened in the program. Hopefully it won't, but it could happen. That's one of the reasons we have the clause in the grant agreement that says if we don't get the expected funding, we don't have to give it all to you. But like I said, it's never happened. The only thing that's happened along these lines is when the agencies have had to draw down their operating grants faster than we got our money from FTA, because remember, we get it every year. And so to avoid that from happening again, we now stipulate that the operating grants can only draw half of their money in the first year of the grant, and then they can have the rest of it the next year, because some people were draining down the money and then we didn't have any left the second year. Probably most of the things that are covered by the 5311 grants are already covered in the way your grant agreement is set up, the way you applied for it. The project administration expense is especially for agencies that are looking to bump up their administrative capacity. It can fund general administration expenses such as an administrative assistant or directory salaries, marketing, office supplies, equipment, rental overhead. It can also be billed as an operating expense if that's what you choose to do. Operating expenses can also be used to pay for preventive maintenance, would be at the operations match rate rather than the more general capital match rate that if you have a preventive maintenance task on your grant. This could come in handy if you overspend in one category and have additional expenses that could be eligible for reimbursement under another category. One of the first rules of grants, which is here or anywhere, is do not bill anything more than once. Double dipping, not allowed. Another thing to remember is that no matter how you bill things, your grant amount stays the same. So when you draw it down, it's gone regardless of the match rate that you use to draw it down. And also, please keep in mind that the 5311 formula grants are use it or lose it. When your grant expires, it's over and any money that's left is gone. When it expires, you are done. So this is kind of already covered in the previous slide a little bit about what the expenses are, and I'm not going to bore you with anything more here. Okay, so match. As you know, you don't get all the money for the regular 5311 formula funds, not like CARES. So let's start with what is not allowed. Fare box, not allowed. Fares are expected to be used toward operating your system, and so FTA reimburses you part of your net operating loss for your system. In-kind volunteer services are valued at the job being performed. For example, an attorney doing legal work pro bono would be valued at a higher rate than an attorney driving a bus. And the subrecipients are also encouraged to generate revenue to help cover the costs of operating their service. So, like, for example, if you have extra space at some facility that you own, maybe a transit center, and you can rent out part of it, that income can be used as match. State funds are often used as match for 5311, and that goes back for many years. Remember, any state money that you use to match 5311 is going to be subject to all 5311 requirements in that project. One note that you might want to file away is that what we're saying here applies to how you manage your grants with us. There are some small differences in what the National Transit Database considers fares when you do your NTD report. You don't have to worry about that now, but when you're filling that out, you might just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, and we can help you with that. Okay, so you all know there's no free money. Anyone who's been with the 5311 program knows that there's a lot of stuff that you have to do to get that money. Some of them take a lot of time and energy, and they can be very frustrating. We do it because we want the money. As the official recipient of the FTA funds, ODOT, Public Transit Division, has to do a lot of things, and it's usually passed on to the subrecipients who are the ones that are giving us the information because you're doing the work. If we don't do these things, Oregon doesn't get the money and you don't get the money. So while we often don't like some of these things, and you probably don't either, that's why we do them. Some of what we do is related to direct requirements, and the way we do them is prescribed by FTA. Others are more indirect. FTA doesn't prescribe what to do, but they do expect us to find a way to do something that we make sure that we achieve compliance. An example of that is our compliance reviews. We do them as part of our monitoring activities to ensure that subrecipients are in compliance and help determine if there is assistance we can provide you to help you be compliant. They're not like an audit where it's all punishment. We really do, believe it or not, want to work with you to help make your programs successful. All grant recipients have to do some of these things, such as quarterly reporting and federally following the federal civil rights requirements, and some are more specific to 5311. There's too much to go into depth right here, but there will be more information about some of these things in module 11, so please make sure that you take part in that one too. Okay, so we talked to a program participant and would like to join the program. It's possible. Some states have a closed program where if you're a current participant, you're in and you can get the 5311, and otherwise you're out. But Oregon does allow new participants. If you want to get a startup grant, you have to provide general public service in an area that does not currently receive 5311 funding, which is a little confusing to some people because you might be providing transportation services right now, such as a 5310 subrecipient that would like to open to the general public. This has happened sometimes with senior centers that are getting 5311 funds, and they decide that, hey, if we got some 5311, we could really improve our services. We just, we have to let the general public come in, and we think that would be a good deal. We could do more for everyone. So in theory, if we add someone to the formula distribution, it can reduce other agencies' allocations because there's a certain amount that's spread, a pie with different pieces. And in theory, you add another piece, some of the other pieces are probably going to get smaller. The transportation providers in Oregon have always been willing to give up money if it's necessary, if it helps Oregon overall. And they've done this year after year after year. They really are looking for the benefit of Oregon. They do ever expect value if they're going to give up money. So you really do need to have a solid project, or they may not want to give up their money. Okay, for the startups, the timing. Well, as you know, we do this on a biennial basis for the program participants, but it's not always convenient to come in at the beginning of a biennium. And if you just started a biennium, you might not want to wait 2 years for the service. You're ready to go, right? So it's flexible to allow you to come in when you're ready. So you don't have to wait around for that next biennium. And it's designed to give you enough money to kind of keep you going until the next round of the formula. So if it's 18 months in, then you would be more likely to get 18 months worth of funding. And if you came in with a year to go, you'd be more likely to get 12 months worth of funding. So if you are interested in getting a startup grant, the first thing you should do is talk to your RTC, because they know your needs and what's going on. Now, how long it takes to get a grant can be very different depending on how far along you are. There are some people that come in with an idea of having transit, but they don't really know what they're going to do. And other people are pretty far along in doing planning and knowing what they want to do. And I probably should warn you that with like most public projects that people do, especially ones that involve public involvement, which is obviously crucial for success, each startup found that it didn't go quite as quickly as they thought, and it involved more work than they thought. And that's what it takes to get things done in this world. And we just decide that our services are vital, and that's what people do so that they happen. You know, you never know who you're going to find riding the bus, right? Public transportation provides vital service for all kinds of people. And it's not just people. We have here a picture of Albert, the service dog. And he is one of Columbia Area Transit's favorite dogs, if not the favorite. I don't want to put down any other dogs. Finally, we're going to end with a cow bus, because what's not to like about a cow bus? Is from Tillamook, and thanks for sharing this picture.